Hello there. This is another cut from the Auto Hub show, and this is not a live show, even though it is behind me. This is our one-on-one interview series. This show is a little different, and that's on purpose because sometimes you want to focus on one person only, not a panel of people, even though panels are fun. So we have Alex here, and Alex has done a lot of stuff, like a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different companies. It looks like mostly in the digital side of the car business. But the question I always like to start with, Alex, is why the automotive industry? Why did you choose this path?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ian. And
No,
the tale as old as time. I think everyone always jokes that they didn't choose automotive; they fell into it. So with me, it was kind of a family affair. My grandpa lived what I guess you could call the American dream. He started detailing cars, turned it into a used car lot. Next thing you know, he opened up the biggest auto auction in Michigan. Sold a couple of those auctions, spent some time work for Manheim, and then did some consulting work for the OEMs. He always used to tell us that it was him and Lee Iacocca that saved the fish is this big stories. And then naturally, my dad fell into the industry as well. He worked for Suburban Collection for a while, and now's at Lithia. But for me, seeing the retail dealer hours, it was something I knew I wanted to stay in automotive, especially growing up in Metro Detroit. But I knew the retail side just wasn't to my liking. So ironically, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and I'm going to work at this plant. It was called Webasto, and we
yeah,
were making the sunroofs for Chrysler 300s. So after the summer of that, and me having PTSD of going to sleep, and I have the muscle memory of do this, do that, and
yeah.
I moved away from that, went to FCA, now Stellantis, did some supply chain work there. After seeing their prehistoric solution that they were utilizing for supply chain. It's like I got to get out of here before I, end up great with gray hair. And from there, I went to Shift Digital. So I spent some time there. Worked for a handful of their certified programs, Acura, Mazda, Polaris. And after that, I ended up with AutoWeb. So I was slinging leads for a while. After slinging leads, they're like, "You're too smart for this. We got to move you into operations." So then I was doing some of the product side as well as managing their publisher and affiliate network. So the CDKs, the CarMaxes, partners that were advertising through AutoWeb or formerly AutoBytel's network. So that was a great experience. Unfortunately, though, we post COVID were acquired, and then they let our Tampa office go. So from there, went over to Digital Airstrike, sold some digital advertising, serviced some of our top dealer groups there. But I was a remote employee. Obviously, they're out of Scottsdale.
Yeah.
So I was just looking for something more intimate, like we'd say that. Being down here in Tampa, Target was coming into the automotive space here in the US. So I ended up taking over the helm there. So uh, long story short, I just couldn't escape automotive. It's regardless of every time I try to get a new job, it's just got a chokehold on me, which for better or for worse, I think is nice because it's as mentioned a family affair. So it keeps a good connection between my parents and my grandpa's passed, but a nice connection with him there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history there. I have a lot of personal family history, even though when I got in the car business, my older brother told me never to do it, and it's kind of funny, but my grandfather started in gas stations and then car dealerships and this and that, and a bag of chips, and my
Nice.
cousins
We
still in the
we have a
business.
gas station in the family as well.
There you go. You got to
Yeah.
start in oil and gas. Even the biggest environmental haters out there started in that area, including the former Prime Minister of Canada's grandfather, who was probably the only business people person in that family. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's the oil and gas stuff is definitely there. And as my uncle used to say, and he's deceased unfortunately, but his wife and him used to say, you either like it or you hate it. You're either gonna do it and then you're sold forever, or you're gonna get into it and go, this is not for me. And I think the people that decide to do it full time and long term tend to be people that like challenges and like change, but more importantly, that really like the maybe not the hours, but they like the interaction. I mean, I worked retail myself for 10 years, which was, 7 days a week, 24/7 for 10 years. And I learned a lot about, cars and people, but more importantly about operations, about negotiation, about business. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you learn from the car business that's applicable to other industries. I've had the ability to work with dealers now for about 15 years in various ways. And what I find, and it's not to beat dealers up by any stretch, is that they tend to be locked in these bunkers that are composed of silos. And it's kind of like, that 30-day journey. But more importantly, what I think it's changed over the last 20 plus years now, maybe 15 plus, but at least 20, is that the whole way you advertise to customers and that you target customers and convert them into sales, whether it be full sales or service, has changed a lot. And it's ironic that you were in the leads business because I was years ago as well, strictly in the subprime side of the business, which was
Ooh.
its own bag of tricks, which was kind of interesting just because it was not at the time really visible in the Canadian market. And I had the opportunity to actually do a panel at Used Car Week Toronto a number of years ago now. I think it was the first panel they ever did on subprime. And it was kind of interesting because the dealers had no idea all the business they were missing by not paying attention to these customers. So I thought that was really interesting. But the thing that was shocking to me and the lead side, and I think that's still true today because I think it was Auto Trader, at least in the Canadian market, one of the largest deal group in Canada just walked away from Auto Trader, which was kind of a newsworthy thing because they're like, we can advertise ourselves for a lot better than Auto Trader can. And I thought that was kind of interesting. But from a targeting point of view, and a digital marketing point of view and a customer acquisition point of view, I think the dealers that really move forward with this, torrential rate, I mean, not rage, wave of change that's happening right now are going to be the dealers that figure out how to acquire customers themselves and figure out how to hire partners that say, hey, I want my lead cost to be this, but more importantly, I have a process once the lead comes in. Because the thing that really shocked me in subprime, specifically on the lead side, was the amount of leads that never went anywhere. Like I was looking at the spend going, you have this percentage of success and this massive percentage of fail, and you're spending all this money. I was like, wow, that's a bad risk. That's a bad gamble. And I was like, wow. So, that was kind of an eye opener for me. But more importantly, when you look at things like you've obviously had a history with DAS, tech, with Shift, which I'm very familiar with. I mean, some people call it the mafia of digital, but whatever.
That's
It is what it is. Obviously, you've learned a lot on the technology side. And as we see the website side of the business kind of changing and evolving with like Techion and other companies getting into it, where do you see that I guess, digital piece going to in the next 8 to 12 months with AI and Amazon and everybody else jumping in there? Like, what do you think?
I would say a shift towards, well, it needs to be a shift towards connectivity. I think you alluded to it, and it might have been before we started.
Yeah,
You mentioned silos.
yeah,
And when you look at any data source in the automotive space, whether you're a third-party marketplace, a DMS, a CRM, a bolt-on chat solution to the DMS, whatever it may be, they all live in separate realms of data. So you're working off of you could be training an AI model and it's if off of one data set compared to all of your data. So that's the big shift that I think we need to see, and they've been talking about it at it seems like every convention now is having that standardized universal data set based off of all that connected data. But with it, I know you alluded to the mafia earlier. We could say there's other families also partaking where it's the dealer's data, and sometimes there's a lot of hoops that need to be jumped through, and it's not from the dealer end that has to deal with it. It's for vendors who are trying to come up with solutions. Even if a dealer was to build something in-house, they still have to go through the same process. So that's the big shift. And I know you mentioned Techion. Tachyon, obviously, they have open APIs. Their tech is head and shoulders above what we see in some of these other legacy solutions kind of bolted together throughout the years. So for me, that's going to be the big shift. If we don't see a connectivity amongst everything, all these other solutions you're adding in, it's just going to be working off of bad data, working off of data that's not clean. You could be advertising to Ian from one solution and you already opted out on another solution. It's just all over the place. And for me, that needs to be the big shift, especially if we're adopting some of these AI solutions, whether for advertising, chat integration, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit about AI and data, and I've had our buddy on many times to talk about that from IQ. And the thing that was shocking to me about the data, and it's not just the cleanliness of the data, that's part of it, but it's the fact that this data is perishable because with privacy laws being out there, with a lack of one-on-one communication, with maybe inaccurate communication. I mean, I still get pieces of mail and email from cars I haven't known for years. It's really about, and he was talking today about slow versus fast. And I thought it was really interesting because I had the opportunity to work with a private sale company years ago on various projects for different OEMs. And part of the big challenge was A, cleaning the data because it was, fat fingered in or whatever, cleaning that. But also, really, instead of target marketing 10, 15, 20,000 customers, it needs to be a lot more strategic, but more importantly, timed to a bunch of different KPIs, whether it be open rate, is it the right time, is there the right offer? And really, to slow down to say, okay, how am I going to get that number I want in my service drive or that number I want in my sales department or even finance or parts? Even though parts is kind of the holy grail, in a consistent way. And it sort of took me back to that website experience when I sold websites, where it was like basic things like service and sales offers dealers couldn't get. It's like you have no service offers and you have no sales offers and you have no used car offers and you have a
Mhm.
website. And what are you doing? So that was kind of interesting. But more importantly, uh, it's about being very strategic. And I would take that forward to any sales. If you're selling any product or service to any business, I think that the holy grail moving forward, so 25, 26, 27, is going to be slowing down to acquire customers, not speeding up. It's not about sending out 30,000 emails or doing 20,000 phone calls anymore. It's about who should I be talking to and when. And that's really what I think is changing. Is that customers are inundated. I mean, I get what a call at least once a week from my cell phone provider and my internet provider trying to sell me services. And I said, I talked to you last week and I told you no. And I gave you reasons. And you're calling me again this week with the same pitch. Like,
Yeah,
learn, dude. What are you doing?
it's absurd. I have a I have a good automotive one where, and I went, and this was months ago. I got
Yeah,
my oil changed,
yeah,
and I leave 2 days later. I get the email, and it's
yeah.
like, "Hey, come in for an oil change." It's like I was just there, and then 2 days later, I go out to my mailbox, and I have a mailer from them, and it's the same thing. Oh, here's an oil change offer. Like you're wasting all of this time, money, postage. What are you what are you doing? And I completely agree with that. Slowing it down, quality over quantity. I think the term utilizes, propensity where they're scoring based off all the KPIs. That makes way more sense. Being the consumer at the right time with the right messaging compared to just the spray and pray that we typically see. So that's definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, I mean, I even get sales offers now, and I happen to own a Jeep product right now, but I get these sales offers, and it's like, what happens when sales slow down? Oh, employee pricing.
Yeah.
When does
Yeah.
that happen? Every year.
My
Like,
manager, I get the manager emails where it's like, oh, this is from the general manager, and you look at the email address it came from, and it'll be like the CRM.
yeah,
Well, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is not personalized whatsoever. And with these automotive solutions, like if you're tying in all this AI and it's just working faster based off of bad data, it's going to exacerbate the problem we currently have.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what's going on out there, and I look at this from a CRM point of view, from whether it be auto or other. I look at it from a sales point of view because I sell things all the time anyway. I look at it from a relationship point of view. I really look at it from a point of view of if I'm a dealer, I should be able to have predictable revenue, even though when I'm selling things might go up and down a little bit because I know what my size of my database is. I know that there's going to be a certain amount of take rate if I advertise properly, but more importantly, hopefully I'm learning from that. So tell me more about Target. Like obviously that's, not to confuse it with the DAS site, which I always thought was kind of funny as a logo, but what is Target all about? Like what does Target bring to dealers?
Yeah, so Target here in the States, typically when I cold call, they confuse it with the big box retailer. So
Target?
glad,
You mean
yes,
Target?
RJ, shame on me.
They
So
worked
Target,
into briefly and then exited market after they failed miserably. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, so Target in and of ourselves, we're a BI solution. Business intelligence is a nerdy way of saying we take dealers' data sources, so your DMS, your CRM, Google Analytics, Xtime, whatever it may be, and we consolidate it all in one place. So from a Target perspective, we operate in a handful of what I like to call near endemic automotive models. So think an OEM retail dealer. Here in North America, that would be heavy equipment, truck and trailer, power sports, and then automotive. We came in this past year into the US market. In the European market, on the automotive side, we work with seven of the top 10 dealer groups, hundreds of other dealers over there, where, at times there's mandatory DMSs that need to be utilized based off of OEM preferences. So with that, dealer groups end up seeing six, seven different DMSs across a group. So here in the States, that's kind of our bread and butter is the dealer partners that we've partnered with thus far are, maybe they have 40 dealers on CDK, 10 on Techion, seven on Reynolds, three on Autosoft, whatever it may
Yep.
be.
Yep.
And what we do is we standardize all that data, normalize it so that if we're pulling the data set from Techion and it's repair order instead of RO number, we standardize it so that it's all speaking to each other.
Right.
So from a dealer group level, that's really our biggest value add, and that goes for variable, fixed accounting. Typically, our biggest fans are the CFOs and controllers, just
Of
given
course.
there's less exporting of. Like, I think that's a funny story where we have one of our partners. I'll be vague here, but we'll just say they have 40 plus stores.
Okay.
And the way they're set up and based off their consolidation strategy of buy sells over the years, they've just ended up with 30 plus different CDK logins. So instead of it all being rolled up to one master DMS account where they can consolidate it all in there, they have to export each individual, whether you're the fixed ops director, the variable ops director, or you're the CFO who has to deal with all this shit at the end of the
Yeah.
month, it all comes full circle. So that's where we came in and it was kind of funny. They were giddy, like laughing. They're like, what do you mean this is all just in here now and we can work on the data, act on the data, create
Yeah.
reports? Yeah, it's all sits right there. But with it, we can then back into what we were talking about earlier about dirty data. That also comes into play where during the validation process, we clean things up, back out old repair orders, help look into, customers who may have duplicates, things of that nature, just to make it a more quality list. But at our core, we're just an operations tool. So we're not a CDP, we're not a CDXP. You're not going to send text messages with the data. You're going to utilize us
Yes.
to, run a more efficient and profitable business. I think the joke I always like to say is, the commodity I'm selling here is time, and that's really it. So whether you're generally it's geared more towards dealer principals, general managers, kind of VP level operations roles. But even from a service manager perspective, you can look at efficiency, productivity, everything across the board. If it's in the DMS or if it's in your CRM, we can consolidate that in our solution and then act on that data. I know we've talked a bit about AI, so I'll briefly mention that there's within our solution we have AI forecasting models, whether that's for inventory purposes, sales purposes, parts, inventory stocking, and then let's just say we're cooking some things. We like to wait before it's fully cooked before we present it to our customers. But think of conversational tools where you can query your data based off of requests, and it'll pull that in. Lots of other things in the works based off of incoming technology, which is nice to see. It makes it a lot more user friendly. But yeah, that's really where we're at here in the States, and it's been a fun transition working with some of the mob families in the automotive realm.
Right. So cleaning up the mess, making it easy for people to look at the data and then hopefully action that data so that they can make better financial decisions, projection decisions, and then hopefully make adjustments in whether it be a group or stores to get the efficiency that they need to. So what does it look like? I mean, I know dealers are like, technology, stuff I got to do. I don't know how to do it. I just kind of want it to be easy. Like, how does that, like, what does it look like to install this in, say, a group that has 20 roofs? Like, what does that
Yeah.
look like?
Yeah, so it depends on the tech stack. Primarily our go-to-market, we focused on CDK dealers, just given the
Yeah,
market share. And with that, they have the Fortellis marketplace. So think of it like the Apple App Store.
yeah,
A dealer goes in, they can subscribe to the app. We then get access to the APIs of the data and we can ingest it that way. For all other DMSs, we have data aggregators that we leverage for that. But typically, onboarding takes 1 to 2 weeks for us to ingest the data. For our dealer partners, do you have Costco in Canada?
yep, absolutely.
Okay. All
Costco's
right.
here. The
So
hot dogs are
I
here. Yeah.
okay, perfect. Glad to hear that the glizzies are available
I don't know what they cost these days because I don't eat hot dogs, but I believe the hot dog and Pepsi or whatever they're doing
they kept them
are
at a
available.
buck 50 here
Yeah,
in the
I think
US.
that's
So
that's I think that's like the de facto. It's like the IKEA breakfast back in the day.
yeah.
What was it
Uh,
1.99 back in the day? Breakfast like powdered eggs and who knows what for $2. Yeah,
well, what I always like to tell our dealer partners is it's kind of like Costco, where we give you the free sample. So
yeah,
typically we'll do free proof of concept. Dealers can have access for 2 weeks, and that's where we'll pull in the CFO, variable
yeah,
ops director, fixed ops directors to play around with the data and see if it's worth exploring further. But from there, out of the box, I think we have 250 to 300 or so reports. But the beauty of our solution is that, and I won't name names, but we're not like other reporting solutions in the automotive space because our main competitors are the Power BIs, the Tableaus, the Clicks of
yeah,
the world. So given Target is the underlying technology, you have full access to your data warehouse. So if you come in a Monday morning and you're like, you know what, I'd love to see sales reps by lead source, by close rate, by zip code, you can pull in that criteria and build a report relatively quickly.
yeah,
So that's typically the value add that we add to our dealer partners. From a tech perspective, though, I will say there's if we get a group with under 5 stores that maybe their marketing director who knew how to run Facebook ads and was appointed the marketing director
yeah.
doesn't have the technical wherewithal. And I'm trying to tiptoe around how to say that nicely, but it can be a bit daunting. Most of our dealer partners do have an IT director in-house that's helping facilitate some of this just because there's a lot that can go into the initial setup.
Yeah, you need to have an analyst mindset and a very data driven idea so that way at least you have those basic skills to do that properly. And I think when you look at say that 1 to 5 rooftop, depending on obviously the scale of those, they may just not have that bench strength in house. They may just have to, hire someone to do that for them or, that kind of thing, because it's also possible they just don't have that even management bench strength because car people can sometimes be shoot from the hip, not technically savvy. And I think people underestimate that analyst kind of viewpoint. I know when I was doing work with Stellantis and Honda and Acura and Audi and other things, it was always kind of interesting to sort of see the people they had at their different regional offices and sort of their um, different areas of skill in these areas. Where I was managing a lot of data, and granted, back in the day it was spreadsheet data, but I was updating it daily, and sometimes multiple times a day. So I got really into the data and into the weeds, and I could see stuff that was clearly not right pretty quickly because you could eyeball it. And today that's even easier because you can actually use, to your point, Tableau or other things to really visually look at that, and it's pretty obvious just looking at it that something's wrong because it
Yeah.
just doesn't add up, right? I used to have
Yeah,
this
the
discussion with lead providers all the time. And
the
it's like,
the
okay,
amount
these
of
leads are not what you say they are.
oh that I'll stay away from that one.
Clearly, you're saying it's this. It's not the steak sandwich you're looking for, man. That's not
Yeah.
what it is. There's something wrong there. Those numbers
On
don't add up.
on the yeah, what do you mean our close rate across the board isn't 12%, like you told
Yeah.
me? Um, from a dealer perspective, I've come across some fun, I like to call them Frankenstein Excel sheets where
Yeah.
it's either daily, weekly, or monthly. They're
Yeah.
going in and they're updating something as simple as, sales volume, where you're getting errors
Oh
like
yeah.
across the board, where maybe some Excel guru came in, built a
Yeah.
report where they could manually input it and it'll auto adjust. But it's painful to see because I alluded to it earlier, the commodity being sold here is time. And if we can free that time up to better service customers, provide an overall better customer experience, that's really what we're looking for here, because that's the end goal for, any vendor in the automotive space.
And what's the cost for the solution? Like, what would it cost the dealer if they want to do that? And what's the upside? Like, what does that look like 30,
Yeah.
60, 90 days in?
Yeah. So typically what we do is we back into it based off of volume. So
Okay.
it gives us an idea of the data amount that we're going to ingest. And then from a sales side, we have a equation we can back into from an ROs that are going to be worked. So anywhere in the 6 to 1,200 range. Obviously, as we scale with not us scale, if it's a dealer group that has 40 plus stores, I think there it's in the $400 range. So it can be, pretty pricey from a holistic view, but if you look on a store by store level, it's not anything crazy. For, immediate value, for us, that's kind of the point of that initial 2 week proof of concept is we sit down with each department who's actually going to be utilizing the solution. We validate some of the data so that'll what we do in Target is we start from the transaction level up on everything,
Yeah.
whether it's a new vehicle invoiced or an RO. You can see the front, like you can click on a specific deal and you'll see what's in the general ledger. You'll see the front, the back, everything from if it's in the DMS, it's in Target. So during that validation phase, we like to think that 2 week period is where we're going to be able to fine tune it so that the minute you
Right.
hit the ground, you're able to utilize it and you're not working through kinks of, okay, is this data correct? Can we actually act on it? And then at that point, it's free reign. The initial sale itself, sometimes it will back into like, okay, you mentioned your controllers spend 40 hours a month doing this. How much do they make? XYZ. But I don't really like to get into that because I think the value speaks for itself once we showcase their actual data in Target.
Right. There will be more details below, just in case you want to get more details on Target. I'm assuming you probably want to look at a demo and maybe get your, I don't know, CFO or accounting team or bookkeepers in on the data side. If you have an IT person, obviously they'll be able to probably put a handle on the technical side. I know that there's a lot of people that like to beat up technical people, but they do have a place, especially as we deal with a more and more data driven world. I mean, I think as you look at the advance over the last, call it 10 years, and with advances in data analytics and other things, whether it be in your word processor or your web browser or even the simple tools like ChatGPT, you're definitely going to have the ability to maybe not replace staff, but make them much more efficient. And I think that's really what it comes down to. I think at the end of the day, and I hear this a lot from dealers, well, I want to just replace staff. Well, maybe it's just instead of hiring three new guys you're going to get rid of next week, you just make the people you have more efficient. So I think that's kind of where I see it, is that in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see, or maybe less, you're going to see dealership operations to be able to run a lot more efficiently and drive revenue with better tools. And I think that's what Target represents, is the tools that are out there: CDK, Reynolds and Reynolds, PBS, Dealer Track, you name it, Tachyon are great, but they're only great at the things they do, and nothing does everything well. Really, what you want is a tool where you can bring all this together, especially if you have different CRMs and DMSs across your group, and be able to look at the data and action it. And I think that's really why tools like Target exist, because you really want to have that data, I mean, in a timely fashion, because you need to take action. And I know we live in a 30-day world in auto, but the reality is it's an annual kind of thing, but actions can be done daily. So you can take actions today to project that future that's better. And I think that that's going to become more and more important as the pace of change accelerates. And if there's one thing that I've seen specifically in the last 3 years, in the last six, but even more in the last three, is the pace of change is accelerating. It's not slowing down. So that can be a little overwhelming, but that's why tools like Target exist, so that you can get that information in a timely manner and take action. And you don't have to be that mathematical, data driven AI genius to do that, but you do need some technical skill to be able to at least read and interpret that data. And that should hopefully serve you man hours. And then in terms of results over time, I mean, how long has this solution been in market?
So our founder in Belgium, he actually oversaw Northern European operations for CDK, or at the
Okay.
time, ADP. And that was his thought process was, hey, it'd be sweet if we can pull in external data sources into our solution. And they told him to go pound sand. So he said, all right, see ya. And spun up Target Automotive in the EMEA market.
Yeah.
So we've been around 20 plus years just on the automotive side. Target as a whole, they've been, I think, 30 plus years. So we're not a new name, we're just a new name in the automotive realm. If you look into like the heavy equipment space, we have, I mean, dealers can use co-op funds, like on the Kubota end, like they could use co-op funds for utilizing our solution. So it's more so getting our name out there in automotive and starting to sink our teeth into growing our dealer network.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for taking the time today to talk more about Target. So if you are looking to implement data across the dealer group, get it in easily digestible information that's consistent, and more importantly, make actionable decisions. It's a great way to do that. Just bear in mind that you may need to hire someone who's technical if you don't have anyone, shockingly, at your dealer group who can do that. But once that's done, that should give you actionable data that allows you to make better decisions. And I am doing a show on Monday about acquisition, because that seems to be more and more the discussion lately. But in order to compete with those large dealer groups, you need to have the data to get ahead of them. And if you don't, I just don't see how you're going to make it moving forward. I just don't think you can shoot from the hip from a data perspective anymore. I just don't see that happening. Spreadsheets are kind of a thing from 1980, and I think even more so today. But I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Have a good weekend.